Good morning. Welcome to Designing Healthy Environments with AP Monarch. I am Alicia Ponce, architect, founder, and principal of AP Monarch. We are architects and sustainability consultants. And today we invite you, Victoria Wilson, Queen of Green. So Victoria Wilson, she was born and raised on the Chicago South Side. And she is known for her fun-loving and charismatic personality and creative energy. Victoria's wisdom provides her clients with understanding and knowledge to help them tackle their problems head on. She received the first administered Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental Science. From there, she obtained a full scholarship for her master's degree to Drexel University of Philadelphia, Queen of Green, serial entrepreneur, wife and mother, future author and speaker. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. It's such an honor and I appreciate it. And so happy to talk about our topic of discussion today. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, and the topic today is called Equity and Air and Water. And the reason you were invited today is, first of all, you were introduced by a very good friend, Juan Calajorrano of Hacia. And he says, I need to thank him every day because he introduces me to pretty amazing people, including you. Like, we just hit it off. He told me your agenda and your mission and advocacy for environmentalism, and I thought, okay, let's do this talk on the state of air and water quality. And one of the things that I wanted to start to talk about is before we get into what you do is I wanted to mention this talk that I was a part of, this webinar, a panel webinar. On Thursday of last week, where it was called Adaptation, and it was hosted by Interface, which is a carpet company. They're the ones who started the revolution on the carpet tile, and their mission is to create to be a net zero company. So they're worldwide. They're worldwide, and they want to have their operations and their products to be just carbon free and even, carbon positive or carbon zero.
Wow.
And anyway, Interface hosted this talk with well-known author Paul Hawken. He was the author of Carbon Drawdown, and in this book, he writes 100 solutions that we can do now to reduce carbon. And the other person was Janine Benyus, and she's a biologist, and her book is called Biomimicry, and she helps connect the dots of nature and how we operate as humans. And so, nature, design inspired by nature. Mm-hmm. And so why I bring this up is because these are two people who are very influential in the design of our environment, and they're huge advocates. And I have to give a lot of props to Paul Hawken because he was introduced and he went right into the root cause of what we're dealing with now, environmental justice, climate change. And he just said, we are in a state where we can no longer separate this environmental racism and, what's happening with the protests of George Floyd. It's like, how can we separate the two? We have witnessed a murder online, and we're also going through this pandemic. This pandemic that is an invisible enemy that is attacking the Black and Brown communities more than anything. And so it brings this awareness to, of course, us, but everybody else at large. And so I really give props to him for bringing that up, because we need people like him to bring this conversation to the forefront and to discuss it, to talk about why is this happening? Why is it affecting the Black and Brown communities?
Absolutely.
So that's a little bit about, I'm glad that I caught that, that talk, and it's a heightened awareness. So
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I was just going to piggyback off of what you said. Let's look at it this way. Systemic racism and environmental injustice are pretty much one on one. They're parallel, because you pretty much have one with the other. In low-income communities, where we're seeing most of the minority communities impacted by environmental issues, such as health associated with lead poisoning inside of unrenovated subsidy housing, that's where you're seeing your highest peaks of violence and seeing your highest peaks of discrimination for Black and Brown communities. So they go together. They go together. We're talking about a lack of resources, a lack of commitment from the municipalities to support those communities, and they're fed up and they're tired. So absolutely, they're parallel. They definitely go together.
Yeah, and just this weekend also, and this is something that you and I have been researching, and in a lot of ways, I mean, we live it too, right? And so again, I saw this, reading this announcement. It's through the Alliance for Climate Change. Quite simply, and this is the state of Chicago, where 68% of Black people in the U.S. live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant. Wow.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier, and so I wanted to ask you just to talk a little bit about the state of air and water quality in Chicago.
So just looking at some of the most current reports of 2018, they're falling within the EPA guidelines for making sure that we don't have any maximum contamination levels. However, the problem is it's not not the short term, but more so the long term impacts of those communities when it comes down to exposure with environmental contaminants. In more underserved communities, we see higher traffic from diesel trucks. In more underserved communities, we see that they're closer to facilities that have chemical hazards and accidents within their vicinity. Not only that, you have fine particulate pollutants that are commonly inside of the air that is kicked up. One of the things that we were talking about, especially here in Illinois, is that our most underserved communities are in the industrial corridors, and so they're more vulnerable to those hazards in their air and their water quality. One of the biggest concerns that I have is in regards to waste discharge and the emission of toxic chemicals, as well as unremediated Superfund sites, which continuously go on without being properly taken care of and revitalized. Those are the more bigger concerns and issues, because we have children who are outside playing inside of these contaminated soils, and what are they doing? They're doing a hand-to-mouth ingestion of these particulates, and that's how they end up coming into contact with the particulates, or they breathe it in, and that's your routes of exposure: ingestion and inhalation. And so when you're sitting inside of an industrial corridor, you're absolutely the most vulnerable communities. And that's where we really need to look at, is how do we truly focus on the remediation and reduce our exposure in these corridors.
Right. And, we can also talk about how communities compare in the city of Chicago. I mean, this is a nationwide problem, but here in our home in Chicago, we can talk about the root causes and how communities compare from, starting from the north side, moving your way to the west side and going north. How how do these communities compare, Victoria? And
It's actually startling. I actually grew up on the north side of Chicago, right off of
oh, okay.
Montrose Beach, and so I can remember my transition coming from the north side, moving south. I went from being, just within walking distance from the beach to being literally right around the corner uh, from Doty Road waste facility.
Mm,
And how much of a start, how drastic that was of a change for me. I could definitely tell the difference in the air quality, which was one of the biggest things. And as I grew up, I really didn't know how much our community was in the middle of a wasteland. I didn't know because it was
mhm,
hidden by housing, and it was hidden by a big old mountain that looked like just a green field, which ended up turning out to be a landfill. And so one of the biggest things that I've noticed as I come back from Philadelphia is that I actually took more gain and interest in what was going on in our own backyards. And so specifically, let's just think about what's going on the north side. This happened in transitioning here to the south side.
mhm,
If you happen to know about Lincoln Yards, which is currently going up right now, we have a steel company called General Iron who is making their way to the south side of Chicago to prepare for the renovation and the move. They're moving from the north side to the south side of Chicago, and we have southeast residents who are not excited about receiving that iron metal shred that's coming from the Lincoln Park area and being transported over here to the Southland area. We
mm,
can also talk about the Crawford coal firing facility that has been retired for years over there in their little village. And everybody knows what happened very recently when that smokestack fell. Those are really big concerns for those communities and our communities in general, and how susceptible we are to big industry coming in and pretty much just destroying our communities. One of the things about the South corridors is that you have major corporations such as Ozinga, you have Ford that's out here. They have heavy traffic. And not only that, they're continuously just emitting pollutants and toxins that is really unacceptable and wouldn't be acceptable in communities like Evanston or Wicker Park. They wouldn't have it. They would throw a
mhm,
fit,
mhm,
and so the question is why are Black and brown communities able to just accept the load and the waste and
mhm,
then not be reinvested into or cleaned up properly? And
mhm,
one of the biggest developments that's happening most recently is the new Amazon facility that's going in Pullman. And I was very excited to see. I'm like, oh, great, that's great jobs. But then I had to think about it. You would put a new facility for Amazon right in the heart of a residential community versus putting it along where you already have industrial corridors that are already prepared and that need to be renovated, revitalized, and remediated for waste and Superfund sites. Why didn't they decide to put the property there? Why would they put it right in the middle of the heart of a residential community, which
mhm,
probably wouldn't have been nothing but maybe 5 or 10 miles away? It's
mhm.
not really consideration of the community. It's not really consideration of the impact that it has, nor the congestion of the traffic. But those are things that really need to be addressed and considered.
Right. I mean, and it's just a continuation of the blatant environmental racism that continues. And
Exactly.
it's not that our communities are not making noise, because we are, but we still need to, find a ways to be a unified voice, and focus on this way of solutions and remediation. And we also talked about, like, what are the things that we can do to make change, right? To vote and to change policy. We talked about policy,
Absolutely.
right? Because you mentioned Hilco, the coal plant that the smokestack that fell over,
Mm,
and in the middle of a pandemic, in a community that's a
yeah,
working class community that already has a history of asthma and Parkinson's disease and several other respiratory issues, where people are testing positive, and they're dying, and they choose to implode this smokestack in the middle of this,
mm,
so, and now you're talking about Amazon moving into the middle of a residential community. So it's about bringing awareness, and that's part of what you do, right? Awareness and
absolutely.
advocacy. I'd like to say hello to Nando Mia. That's our friend Juan. He has tuned in.
Hi.
Hello, Juan. Thank you for joining. So that's what you do, to spread that advocacy and awareness. Can you talk about, what is it that you do and how you got into it?
Absolutely. So, my company is Naturally Urban Environmental Incorporated. I got into advocacy purely off of being in the right place at the right time. The last past year and a half, I've really been focused on community outreach with STEM training and workshops and community involvement. And so that turned into me becoming the chair of the Cook County Environmental and Sustainability Committee, which was newly and recently developed to reach out to all the corridors here in Cook County to encourage environmental sustainability, to bring about policy and reform throughout each of these corridors. Unfortunately, the south and west sides of Chicago are the most susceptible and the most vulnerable, and we have the most work to do. And through Cook County Environmental and Sustainability Committee, I have primary access to our aldermen, our state representatives, and our mayors to be able to really get to the grassroots of what they're looking to do, how Cook County can get involved to support them in those endeavors. And so right now I'm really building relationships with our community leaders, building relationships with our non-for-profit organizations such as Environmentalists of Color, to make sure that the voices are pretty much coming together and being bridged to be able to truly bring about reform and action. Because like you just mentioned, there are so many things that we see on the front line. We see individuals with their picket signs, especially in front of these industrial facilities, saying, hey, you're making us sick. You know, our children are getting sick. Our elderly are dying because they're exposed and we can't afford the health care. How do we help
Mm-hmm.
them to lift their voices up? Because most people don't show up at the committee meetings. Most people don't show up to the lives when it comes down to speaking to their aldermen or commissioners. So they have to have advocates who are out here speaking up on their behalf. And so, especially now in this movement of Black Lives Matter and this movement of, the dreamers, in this movement of everything that we have going on, we need to absolutely make sure that this environmental justice push is a part of this movement, because at this point, we're running out of time. We're running out of time. We have a responsibility to this next generation to leave it better than what it was. And I truly believe that we have the technology, that we have the resources. We just need the implementation.
Yeah. I like to think of it as the time is now.
Yeah.
The time is now. We have to be able to, again, find this unified voice to be able to create these healthy environments. One of the reasons why my company is called AP Monarch and our logo is the monarch butterfly is because it represents a healthy environment, and the symbol of a butterfly makes everybody a little happy. When you see the butterfly fluttering around, and it doesn't matter how old you are, you're a 4-year-old or you're a 64-year-old, you smile and you point,
Yes.
and that represents, healthy air, healthy water nearby, right within footsteps. And so we want to be able to pollinate, these urban environments with these experiences. So, that's part of what you do. You're a pollinator as an advocate, as an educator, and raising this awareness to the community, to people. Okay, let's be involved in these
Mhm.
meetings. Let's show up. Um, wanted to, if you can elaborate a little bit more on talking about your first experience with testing air, right? And you have such a wealth of knowledge in that area, and so you really have a great understanding of good air and bad air, like on a technical perspective.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I've had a very eclectic array of research experience over the last past 15 years. everything from testing ambient air for particulate matter all the way to testing for methanotrophic bacteria on the top of landfills. And so with my experience with air quality in indoor spaces to outdoor spaces, it just depends on one of the sampling methods in which we're looking for detecting for contaminants in that particular material. And so not only that, I also do water quality sampling and analysis. I enjoy water. I think water is one of the most essential elements that we have to protect, especially now with it being threatened, especially with sea level rise being on the peak right now. We're on a peak of sea level rise, and our water quality is definitely being threatened, as well as our air quality. But I'm so glad that, you know, that we have the Kyoto agreement and the Paris agreement that have moved forth, which have drastically reduced our carbon emissions, compared to 2015. So those are good strides in the right direction. When it comes down to air quality, we really ought to be aware of what our vulnerabilities are, aware of where we're seeing the most emissions, and deviate with providing a solution for reducing the impact of that air quality to those communities. One of the things in which I'm more concerned about now is indoor quality, because right now we're spending 90% of our time inside of our homes. And especially when you're dealing with materials like you were mentioning earlier, the carpet towels, you know, we were concerned at one point about phthalates that were being emitted off of those carpet towels, or VOCs that were being emitted. And those are contaminants that we are most susceptible to, especially when it comes to higher concentration in those materials in an enclosed and encapsulated area. And so we really want to make sure that we're being safe when it comes down to selecting materials, especially in the renovations and rehabs of homes, especially in your line of work.
Yeah, I have a comment here by Ray Chulin. Hello. They say, I love that you are a pollinator. Yes.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's funny that you say that, because my non-for-profit is a spinoff of Naturally Urban, which is New Community Works, and my my logo is a bumblebee. My logo is a bumblebee.
Those are, you know, these are the essential workers of nature, you know, the essential workers that are out there working endlessly and tirelessly.
Absolutely.
And willingly. So
yeah. I'm a new gardener, so I'm always looking for our pollinators. I'm like, are you there? No, I see a grub.
Yeah.
Awesome.
No, indeed. We spend now with the pandemic, it's like the statistic was that we do spend 90% of our time indoors, but now with the pandemic, it's closer to like 98, 99%, you know? And so I remind people, what is it that we're breathing in, right? What do we breathe in while we're indoors? And what is it made out of, and how is it made? And so it is, you know, green building has taken us down this path of transparency and advocacy, and holding people accountable for how these things are made. You know, it's not much of you know, profit over people anymore. We are woke. We like, okay, let's look at this closely, right?
Absolutely right. And that's one of the biggest things as well, especially when you talk about minority communities. I was just thinking to myself, who is along the transit lines? You know, your bus routes. You have a lot of urban city dwellers there. And not only that, but they leave their windows open, you know, and so they're getting all the carbon monoxide that's kicking in right into their window from all those diesel particulates, and their kids are becoming exposed to those as well. Other environmental hazards are pests that are also inside the facility, the home, or the facility in which they're staying in. Roaches, mice, rats, they all kick off particulates that are very, very harmful to children and seniors of all ages. And so now when we're talking about this environmental justice movement, we have to consider every aspect of it and push for a more sustainable future. It's inevitable right now at this point. You know, why are we not doing completely hybrid vehicles when it comes down to our transit systems? Why are we not increasing our walkability of our minority communities? You go to the higher epsilon communities, and they're able to scroll and walk and ride their bikes very freely and have reduced traffic when it comes down to the bus routes. They only have it on the exterior. They don't necessarily have it on the interior of those blocks. But if you go to a little village, or if you go to Pullman, you have traffic moving directly through the residential communities, which is absolutely concerning and devastating. Hello. Hi there, Urban Aesthetics. Good morning.
Good
Calling in from
morning.
Philadelphia.
Nice.
Yeah, so those are big concerns for me. And I want people just to understand that you have a right. You have a
Mhm.
right. The money's here's the thing. And I
Tell
say
me.
this with a little bit of resistance, and you know, just like, okay, Victoria, before you jump off the edge, here's the thing. There is money. There is money to do the work. The
Mhm.
problem is that we don't have a workforce prepared to do the work.
Mm.
And that's where
Mhm.
my goal is next. After we focus on advocacy and training and encouraging people
Mhm.
about getting into the STEM disciplines, how do we develop a workforce that understands the call and the responsibility with this next move that's happening in our communities and in the environmental justice division? And that is by creating green collar jobs,
Mhm.
solar installers. You know, we had to have students and technicians who are familiar with low emitting materials and who understand how to work with those materials. We're dealing with the city as well when it comes down to permitting or a LEED certified building. They really
Mhm.
don't know, have inspectors out there who are ready to really assess properties
Yes.
to make them
So where do you
eco-friendly and sustainable.
what can you add to the workforce development? And you're doing something pretty cool right now. And you got a thumbs up from Nando Mia, our friend Juan, you know. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done as far as workforce development as well? And that is so true. You know, there is the money, but we need more, we need more workforce. And so,
Absolutely.
mm-hmm,
Absolutely. So I am a product of workforce development. That's what's crazy. I have a master's degree in environmental science with an emphasis in industrial hygiene, with an emphasis in blah, blah, blah. But I have to say, the truth of the matter is, over the past 2.5 years, I've been sitting on the sidelines a little bit, just being observant to figure out where I fit. And so I've been very fortunate to go through 2 workforce training programs. And everybody's like, oh, why do you need all that? Well, I was renewing my certifications. That was one of my main reasons. I was renewing my certification. And so I found a program that was going to allow for me to renew my certification for my lead RRP. And that was with OAI Incorporated. But their focus was more so on, you know, helping returning citizens to get placed into jobs. And so I
okay.
was like, okay. And for me, I was like, okay, if I'm really going to understand this challenge and this problem, I actually have to get in the thick of it. And so I went ahead
Mm-hmm.
and I went through the 16-week course. I committed myself to that. It was it was amazing. It was challenging at the same time because at that time we were talking about carpentry, and then they were pushing the FEJA, the Future Energy Jobs Act. And so they wanted to encourage more people to get into solar panel installation or PV installation. And so I went through the program and I got an opportunity to work alongside with some awesome men and women who were ready to change their lives. And I got to see the challenges of
Mm-hmm.
being able to not find a babysitter or getting from work to home or having enough food to last you
Yes.
throughout the week, or just the many challenges that they had just trying to start over again. And
Mm-hmm.
that just really just pulled at me even more. It was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's a generation ready. They're ready to learn. Let's get them ready to go. And so after the OAI training program, and I finished that program, it was 16 weeks long, which was awesome. I became a PV solar installer. I jumped into the high C. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bravo.
I jumped right on over to the high C ComEd feature program for contractors. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh, yeah, this is going to pick me back up, right? And so I'm so excited to have participated in the first cohort class for the NABCET PV Associate Training, which we
Mm.
just completed, and we'll be receiving our graduation, I believe, in July. So that's pretty awesome. And so grateful for institutions and organizations like HICIA and OAI who are out here doing the frontline work.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing the frontline work. I'm so excited and so happy to continue to work with them in partnership by recruiting and supporting them in their endeavors to get more people into those positions to be ready for this green collar workforce, because they have to be ready. But one of the biggest challenges that I've noticed is finding the students and the pupils who are ready to do it. But that's coming from a grassroots perspective. So now we have to literally get out in the trenches and pull them in, get
Mm-hmm.
busloads of people and pull them in. But workforce training, on-the-job training, construction training, hands-on training. I'm so excited about where this is headed. Right now, we're doing COVID-19 training for returning workers into the workforce phase 3. We're also doing project management training, and
Mm-hmm.
lead RRP is coming on our training docs as well. So we're very excited.
And this is a whole collective of how we all begin to create or design and build healthy environments.
Absolutely.
It's just, we have to build this community, continue to build this community through workforce, and, be prepared, right? Another thing that I keep hearing is that, and other, just wrapping it all into this one umbrella, this whole thing with the COVID, the pandemic, and the environmental racism, and Black Lives Matter, it's a complex issue. But if you look at it closely, you start to connect the dots, right? And so another thing I heard was that, in other countries, like in Scandinavia, for example, if somebody loses their job, the government helps you find another job. Whereas in this country, you lose your job, deal with it. And then, so now we have a rise on homelessness too. And so we have mental health issues. We have our health issues. And so it's a chess game, but we have to understand all the pieces. But you are doing an amazing job. You're getting that training. You're spreading that awareness. And I want you to talk a little bit about your Sisters in Cinema development as well, because I think that should get mentioned.
Absolutely. Thank you for
should.
mentioning it. We just received one of our, well, Naturally Urban, my company, has only, we just turned a year old, actually on the 27th. So I've been an entrepreneur, and like I said, pretty much a serial entrepreneur over the past 5 years. But I'm so excited about this project because as a construction project manager, project developer, I'm always looking to implement sustainability inside of all my projects. And so for this project, which was funded and assisted and funded through the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, Sisters in Cinema is going to be what I like to call a little jewel on the south side of Chicago. It's only blocks away from the new presidential library that is coming up for Obama. It's right down the street from the South Shore Cultural Arts Center. So it's really in the midst of the thick of those corridors and those communities that really need a glimmer of light and hope. And so the founder is Yvonne Wilborn. She is the president and CEO of the non-for-profit, which is Sisters in Cinema. She's a film director and photographer. And so she has a mission to encourage young girls to get involved inside of the film and cinema industry. And so this facility is a commercial building right off of 72nd Street, and it's going to be fully gut renovated and have a 45 seating theater. It's going to have a state-of-the-art LED lighting, sound systems inside of it. And we're hoping that we can find additional funding that we'll be able to install solar panels on top of the roof to provide electricity for the building. But I'm so excited for this project. I'm in partnership with some wonderful people, and we're just so excited to bring awareness to these areas that are definitely needing the support and encouragement, and especially bringing in the sustainability and renewable energy piece is definitely going to set it on the right track. Thank you for mentioning it. I appreciate that.
No, that's we need to know about these projects so that we can get more and, continue this momentum. So no, that's really exciting, and we'll be waiting as it develops, right? We'll be listening in as it develops. And so the both of us, we belong to this organization called Environmentalists of Color. I was introduced to this organization, I think it was 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And I found out recently that you sit on the board. Is that correct?
I do sit on the
Yeah,
advisory
okay.
board. It's
Yes,
bananas.
advisory board. So can you talk a little bit about EOC as we, call it EOC, the mission behind it and why it was created and then we'll continue.
Yeah,
Talk a little
so
bit about
EOC is what I would like to say is the Environmentalists of Color network. And so
it. Hmm.
ultimately the goal was to bring individuals inside of these different career fields together to support one another because as you know, it's not very often that you see minorities of our shade in the STEM disciplines. And so they wanted to bring a hub of a community together for scholarships, grants, fellowships, and community advocacy. And so we network with each other, we join each other on events, we support each other's endeavors throughout our communities. And now EOC is really starting to become a single catalyst in regards to the environmental justice movement because we all are there. And now we're starting to see more roots taking place where we're stretching and we're moving in what we're doing in our capacity. And so right now EOC is still in the process of revamping because they want to grow to that next level to be that support and advocacy organization that all of the other not-for-profits can come to because we want to make sure that we're truly making an impact, changing the culture behind environmental sustainability, environmental advocacy, environmental justice. So I'm truly honored and excited to be on the ELC advisory committee because I'm
Nice.
so excited to see these wonderful men and women of color who truly know where the issues are, truly know how we can truly resolve those problems and what actions need to happen. And so EOC is pretty much the grassroots of the network that is going out there and truly putting their foot down to help these communities.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong. And I think that the why EOC was created was one of the founders came across this article. It was like an HBR article, Harvard Business Review, that, people of color are not present when it comes to sustainability. They're hard to find.
Mhm.
And so, and so that article was the motivation to create Environmentalists of Color. I'm like, yes, we are. We're here. And
Yes.
so, now we are a network of, architects, there's engineers, there's policy writers, there's people in the government, there's advocates and attorneys, everything all across the board. There's
Absolutely.
urban planners. Um, and so that's why, our talk today, has, we can go on forever, really. But I hope that it was just a little token that who is listening to this now and who will listen to it later because we will be sharing it. That how can we make a difference, right? How can we positively, support these groups? Well, we have a way for you to continue to support these groups, to be able to have equitable quality air and quality
Mhm.
water, right? So that we can
Exactly.
continue in this unified way to advocate for, communities, especially the Black and Brown communities, because we are the most vulnerable, South and West sides, and we can see it on maps that have been created by the NRDC, that have been published. You can show the air quality levels of air pollution
Mhm.
between the different communities across the city of Chicago, and there are other resources as well. So what we have for you today is a way for you to support these causes, to continue the advocacy. And Victoria, I'll give you the honors of sharing what we are planning here today.
Yes, so I'm so excited. And again, Alicia, thank you for bringing attention to this subject matter. At the EOC, we're definitely looking to encourage communities and people inside of our network to support in the fight. And so if you are interested, please, 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 please come on over to www.eocnetwork.org to make a monetary donation to go towards our endeavors and our fight. Our network is out here doing our best to be able to shed a light on the topics that concern our communities and make sure that we're there on the front line, showing advocacy, showing support, and showing diversity. And so again, if you are able to make a contribution to www.eocnetwork.org, we would greatly appreciate it. It keeps us in the work, it keeps us in the fight, and it keeps us encouraged along the way. It's so much work to do. I'm so excited for individuals who are ready to go full on in. And like I told everybody in our last meeting, it was nice to be able to post a picture here. It's nice to be able to get on a Zoom phone call there. Now it's time for people to see your face. It's time for people to see your face and match it with your voice, because at this point, with a network as strong as EOC, we can definitely bring about some of the world's best change. And I'm so excited. And EOC is a international organization. So you're more than happy, more than welcome to be involved and to come on board and join us in our fight and our community efforts.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us, for joining me this morning. And I hope that we can continue the conversation and have you back and, find, where you're at, where your projects are at, and how they unveil. And for all of those who are watching, please join us every Monday at 9 a.m. We're here. Next week, we have Rochelle Moreno. We will be talking about a project that's near and dear to her heart called Living Organism. And we are designing a prototype for a residence post-COVID. And what does that look like, right? And so, and then we have Craig Burton. He's a engineer at Interface Engineering in Chicago. And so we will be talking about energy efficiency as how it relates to mechanical systems, and he's worked on so many net zero projects. Awesome. So we're going to talk about that. And then we have more exciting people talking about the quality of light and circadian rhythms. So we'll be, we're hitting on so many topics. And if you have a question or if you have a suggested person that I should talk to and have here on designing healthy environments, please send me a note and we'll get it done.
I absolutely will. I'm so excited for the series and so excited to watch the remainder of the speakers who are going to be coming on, because I am a student of life and I love to learn. So I'm so excited for what you're doing. And thank you for doing this work again. This is awesome.
Yes, thank you. Well, have a wonderful day and I will see you soon.
All right. See you soon. Okay. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, everybody. Bye.